Are we ready to go? Is it time?
It's time, Olivia.
It's time to duel.
It's time to say, welcome back to Call to the Table.
Not bad until the laughter.
I tried really hard, but then you got in my face!
It's okay, Olivia. We can't always succeed.
Turning my back to you again. Getting back to my comfy spot. Welcome back to Call to the Table. Just a bunch of us goofy people talking about really cool topics that may or may not interest you, but we encourage you that you continue to listen because sometimes we have revolutionary moments, like last week, where my mind was open to the idea of women preaching in a different way that I didn't expect. There's your recap. I'm Olivia, and I actually don't have anything to introduce myself as this week, but I did because this was actually my introduction.
Oh.
Inception.
I'm John. I'm the one with a mustache. Or as some people call it.
Are you hoping that I comment on your mustache?
A little.
I've done that on purpose so people can't accuse me and come at me on the comment section. You have a lovely mustache, Jordan.
Oh, okay.
I'm Jordan. I'm not always sick. I just have been for the last 2 months. That's mine.
I don't know what to say. Meow.
What's your name?
Name.
Who are you?
What is your name?
Caroline.
Oh my gosh.
What?
She has to do it at least once a month.
I
Yep.
don't know what to say. You didn't have a theme this time, and so I made it up. This is all your fault. Suck it up.
That's a Who's Line reference.
I'm aware.
No, I know for the people, for the
Oh.
viewers, that's a Who's Line reference that she just did.
Well, yeah.
For those
Yeah.
who didn't watch Who's Line, which how dare you not watch Who's Line? Is
No,
it anyway?
it's epic.
Poor
It's an
unenlightened
amazing-
chumps.
No, I'm glad that that's the route you went because when you said that you feed off of me, I was like, I'm totally using the one where I don't actually have one just to see what happens.
She did it on purpose.
Yeah, I did it on purpose.
So, what's the subject for today?
None of your business.
Okay.
It's missions and mission trips. That's our subject today. So, because somebody out there may not know the difference, what is the difference between missions and mission trips? Go. Caroline has notes on that.
Okay, so I thought of missions, they're being more permanent in that if you have a mission going, it's in another country, you're potentially setting up a church, or, I mean, it doesn't even have to be in another country. If your country's big enough, we got the United States, we got missions everywhere. But it's a permanent place where certain people stay.
I'm not gonna touch your cookie.
I'm not looking at that.
I want some water.
Sorry, Caroline. We completely interrupted
He
you.
literally looked at me like I was about to touch cookie. Can we switch? I'm pretty sure she's gonna, hit me. And I'm actually kind of scared of her hands. Not you.
My hands.
I'm afraid that you've got some power.
She
You can
does.
hurt.
She does.
They're not in my hands, though. They're in my elbows. Ask that one.
Yes.
I can run away from elbows.
You think?
Anyway, what were you saying, Caroline?
I'm sorry. It is lost forever because you all interrupted me. No, so missions are more permanent in my mind because you start a place and you continue to work on that place and you expand from that place. And there are people who stay there. There are people who come and go, kind of like the original 7 churches during the New Testament. And then we've got mission trips, which are short, much shorter. A lot of people who maybe they don't, this is like one of the few opportunities they get to actually leave their home country and go someplace else and do a short-term project for the benefit of a place that really needs help. And so to me, that's the main difference.
Liv?
I don't know. She's looking at John.
I'm looking at you because you're supposed to be talking right now.
I'm, on guard right now with you. You've eaten more energy now. Well, in my opinion, missions are those secret, little tiny, unknown people who go out.
So,
Earpieces.
you're liars?
And they're usually impossible.
Oh.
Dum, dum, da, da, dum, dum, dum. Dee, dee, dee. No, I'm just kidding. Well,
me,
I
me
mean-
and Caroline are over here, like, face palming ourselves for listening to that.
I've eaten. No.
Number 1, erase that from the logs.
I'll be sad. I'll be sad. No, and I think I agree with Caroline as far as like where missions, the difference between missions and mission trips.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the one area that I would I find that I disagree is while missions are long term, they don't have to be overseas, and nor do mission trips.
I did just say it could be in the same country if it's big enough.
Yeah.
But your listening ears on.
I am putting my listening ears on.
Don't you see the headphones? Those are her listening
These are my
ears.
listening ears. I can hear you. But like, when you say country is big enough, would you say that then, while Hawaii is not a country, or Japan is its own
Hawaii
country?
is technically part of the United States.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I meant.
Right, but then let's look at Japan.
You can have multiple missions in multiple places.
Yeah, so I think missions are long term and mission trips are
You go there and you come back.
more short term seed planting.
Mm-hmm.
I can agree with that. I mean, obviously, mission trip does imply a trip. Whether that's only an hour down the road or halfway across the country.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, let's just be honest. How many of us here have even been to all the counties in Georgia?
Oh, no.
Not all the counties.
About to say, we have the second most amount of counties in the United States. But, and like, yeah, I have to agree that missions is more of long term. But what exactly would you classify as a mission as opposed to a ministry? Because you can have, for instance, we partake in a homeless ministry, not a
Yes.
homeless mission.
Right, but to me a mission is a place that is built specifically for reaching out to that community, or at least it's a place that has been transformed into a place to reach out to that community from a faith-based standpoint. And I mean, I guess you could call the shelter that we go to a type of mission, but it hasn't
it
labeled
is.
itself that.
No. Here's where I think the difference is, John, from what you're saying. The Gateway, which is the homeless place that we go to, Gateway itself is a mission.
Yeah.
What we do is we go up and serve at that mission. So what we are doing is a ministry. It's two different things.
We are ministering at that
Mission. That's
So
where I
you're
think the
saying
difference
missions
is.
are flat out only brick and mortar.
No, I
I
wouldn't say
mean,
that.
Not necessarily, but the fact that, like I said, they have to have a more permanent thing. When you've got missionaries, they're the ones who travel. Missions are the ones that are like permanent, that they leave behind after they, and then they go to the next one. Kind of like what I said, the 7 churches of the New Testament. The major ones.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm going off of is what you said about the difference between a ministry and a missions. I think a ministry is something that a bunch of the congregation,
Your chair is too squeaky.
I know, it's bugging me. But it's where you have a group of people within the church or within a home church or whatever that go out and volunteer their time to that particular place. Whether that's going and feeding the homeless, whether that's going to a place like Gigi's house, whether that's all of those actual places that you go and you can volunteer with, that's a ministry that's within the church. I think a mission is what the people come to do a ministry with. I think that's where the difference is. Liv looks very questioned about that.
Well, I think I would describe a ministry versus a mission.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the mission of, like, a particular organization is to go out and feed the hungry.
Mm-hmm.
The ministry, I would say, is the people behind the different sections of that mission. You have a group that is ministering to the actual individuals and talking to them, sitting with them and eating with them.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ministry of actually sitting and prepping and cooking the food. Like, I think that's where my differentiation between, like, if we were talking about a mission that an organization was putting together,
Mm-hmm.
then you have the ministries within inside of that mission. That's my opinion.
But it's the mission is the overall
Goal.
blanket
Yeah.
of it.
Mhm.
Right. Yes.
And sometimes it's physical, and sometimes it's more just in that place, you know, that multiple people take care of, and they don't necessarily, like, make a new building or anything. You know, that sort of thing.
And I'm going to say that... Oh, it finally pulled up. Sorry. ADD moment. I'm going to say that I feel like another big difference between missions and mission trips. I feel like when you go on a mission trip, yes, your main thing may be that you're going to build a well or whatever. But the whole point, I feel like, with a mission trip is you go to... I feel like this is how it is now. And this, we'll talk later about whether or not this is what it should be. But I feel like you go and you do whatever it is to lay the foundation so that in the future other people can keep coming back and keep building on that. I feel like with a mission, you have something that, and it typically is brick and mortar. And I'm not saying it has to be, I'm saying it typically is.
No, but there is some sort of permanence.
Right. But their whole thing there is to again, be a permanent fixture there. So it's not we're going to plant the seed, we're going to go, let you guys deal with what we've put here, and then we'll keep coming back and checking on you. It's a constant flow of, okay, now we're doing this, now we're doing this, now we're doing this, now we're doing that. A great example of that is Gigi's house, which is something that our church supports, and a lot of people in the area, which they take in girls who have been rescued from sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And their whole thing is to keep getting girls in and to support them as long as needed until they're ready to go out. That's not a coming in to these, you know, I'm going to use this term, and I'm really sorry if I offend anyway, but coming into these whorehouses, giving them Bibles, and then leaving.
Well, I mean, it's true, though. I mean, that's or maybe we could call it a bordello. Or
There we
brothel.
go. There we go. Brothels. I'll say that.
Yes, I agree with you. It's like sowing seeds and planting seeds as is a mission trip, and then coming back and doing your best to water that seed, whereas a mission is planting the tree that's already thriving.
Yes. I would completely agree with that.
That stays in, you know, and will continue to flourish.
So, here's where I think Liv might get into a rant. What has caused missions and mission trips to be different than how they were intended to be?
I got a little rant on this too, but you go ahead.
I'm willing to take a back seat and give my opinion last if you guys want to go first.
If you go ahead, Caroline.
'Cause
Caroline has notes on this.
I can rant about this.
I know.
How about this? Before we get into that, just for the sake of our listeners, can we just really quick go around and say, like, if we're a part of a mission, or if we've done mission trips, or if we've, you know, what
Sure.
kind of those, so that way they know where we're coming from as far as experience and background.
Sure.
Or, you know, if you haven't, that's fine, but
Let's do our usual order. Liv, you start, and then John, Jordan, me.
I work for a Christian dance studio that's mission is to utilize dance as a medium of worship and communication of the gospel. I have also been to Hungary on a 2-week mission trip to dance and minister to orphans and orphanages, because Hungary does have one of the highest child prostitute rates, especially in the foster and orphan care system. And I am on track to go to Austria over spring break. I'm going to Austria over spring break to work with Operation Mobilization Arts.
Whoop whoop.
I've really only taken in...
Oh, I've also done the U.S., sorry. I've done a mission trip in the U.S.
I sadly have actually not been on any mission trips or missions. I've been just like in homeless ministries and helping out there.
That counts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
Well,
as
I get what you mean.
I say, we literally just were saying that it's a ministry, not a mission.
Because I'm basically, I know I'm jumping the gun with you, Jordan, but I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat. Although I have read quite a lot about missions that have been like permanent in other, like China, Russia, tribe in South America, which I'd love, Into the Spear, love to talk about. I was hoping I want to talk about that.
I mean,
in this session, but yeah.
What, Liv?
I was listening, but we will have an opportunity to do that because we have a lot of group text questions coming in right now.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll be able to
Okay.
talk about like medias
So-
and
Well,
stuff that we can utilize.
I was going to finish what I was saying.
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
I mean, I was trying to in high school to go to Thailand for their mission trip, which is to go and help rebuild a village that literally through war of the neighboring country was constantly being blown up. Not only helping them rebuild, but teaching them how to do it along with it. And it's not necessarily you get nails and hammers. It was vines and bamboo type of building, which is right up my alley through my Boy Scout background. And I was really trying to do that, and that did not pan out.
So I have not gone any mission trip, and that was, I've had opportunities to go, I chose not to. Mostly because I didn't feel like I was being led to. But I have, throughout my high school career and through being in college, I have partnered with a lot of different missions that have gone, like the one we were just talking about with doing the homeless ministry. Yes, it's a ministry from the church's perspective, but it is partnering with a mission, and we have done more than, like, I have gone outside of just what we do with the church and gone and done other stuff with them. And I've worked with several other different missions where, whether it's working with rescuing animals, because that is a missions, and feeding the homeless and working with kids. And so I've done a lot of different kind of sporadic partnering with missions temporarily. And we actually, I will say this for the sake of our listeners, we don't right now, but probably starting this summer, we are going to start for like 6 months and not partner, but start working with different missions in our community so that we are getting out there and we're giving back. And so that we get to make y'all aware of different places and stuff that are in the area that would love the support and the
And we want to practice what we preach.
Amen to that. So, yeah, that's going to come soon. So if y'all have, I'm going to plug this real quick. If y'all have any missions that you particularly want us to highlight, send us a message, because we have certain ones that we definitely want to hit, like Gigi's house. But other than that, we don't know everything. We don't know what all is in the area. So if y'all have a particular one, please let us know. So back to the question, how is it different, both, from how it was in the New Testament?
Okay. So I said, I mean, there used to be more life or death situations.
Yep.
Seriously. I mean, a lot of communities were founded because someone ended up being a martyr, and that inspired the people to continue the mission. And after, well, I mean, when we start getting further and further into history, missions turned more into conquering splurges, and missions would grow up after the conquerors came in and basically ransacked everything. And so they, you know, it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, they do hear the message of salvation, but are they really hearing it for the right people? You know, that sort of thing. I mean, I was thinking about, like, have we had any missions that are literally like that today? And I brought up End of the Spear, where there was this tribe that had never been reached by the modern civilization, I guess if you want to say that, within, I think they're in Brazil, I don't remember, but
That makes sense.
Point is, and they were on the brink of extinction because they just kept killing each other. And, like, the locals knew about them, but tried to avoid them just because they were so murderous. But there was a small family of missionaries that just wanted to reach out to them, that felt called to do it. And the first few who went out and tried to talk to them were brutally murdered. But their family still came, and they still helped the people, and they learned their language. And the family's children were raised around them, and they learned their language. And those people were brought to God because of that sacrifice. I mean, there's even an angel story. Like, after the guys were, I mean, it's called End of the Spear for a reason. They were literally speared to death. They had an angel sighting because they heard angels above them as they lay dying, but also because the guys who eventually fessed up to being the ones to do it, when they had never heard, like, formal music before, because they didn't sing as a people. And so when they heard a chorus, one of them was like, that's what it sounded like after the thing happened, you know? So, I mean, I'm not saying that every mission has to be like that, but to me, that has reminded me the most of what those early church missions were like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, going back to the life or death, that is kind of where the name Christian came from.
Yeah.
Because Christians were literally in the Colosseum to die, and it was a slanderous term towards followers of Jesus. And as Jesus would have done, they decided to take that slanderous term and make it their badge of honor.
Mm-hmm. Wear it proudly.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the difference for me going, you know, you don't really hear about formally mission or mission trips in the New Testament. What you hear about is Peter and Paul going around. This goes back to the topic we talked about a couple weeks ago of accountability. That's what Peter and Paul did. And a lot of the books that we have is Paul sitting there and writing to these churches and saying, I'm coming to you, or I was just with you, or whatever. And it was them, you know, it was those apostles circulating and making sure that, and building up these churches, but then coming back to them and making sure that they were running how they had set them up. And so it was mission trips, what we would call mission trips. It was a form of accountability. It wasn't this, I'm going to plant the seed and then bolt. They planted the seed, they made sure that the church was running okay, and then they said, okay, now you get to stand on your own, and I'm going to go and I'm going to set up this other church. And then they started making the rounds after it was set up. You hear about Timothy and Peter and Paul and Barnabas going and checking on these churches. And if it was something that was immediate, that they couldn't get to them right away, they'd write to them. Mm-hmm. There's so many books of the Bible where Paul writes, and he sits there and goes, if I could be there to correct you, I would, but I'm somewhere else. So I'm writing to you and saying, how dare you do this? So I think we have taken mission trips, in my opinion, this is solely my opinion, I think we have taken mission trips as Americans, as this whole, we're going to go to these poor, unfortunate people who don't have technology and don't have all this stuff, and we're going to bless them with our presence.
And we're going to help them for 1 week, and then we have to go home because, oh my word, this place is awful.
Yeah. Whereas I feel like when Peter and Paul went, they went until they felt like that particular church could stand on its own, while they went and either checked with another one or went and established another one. But they were there until they felt that they were that comfortable. And then, like I said, then it was just accountability of keeping them in check.
Wanting to touch on your technology fact is also back then, the world, even though their known world was so small, it was much bigger. Nowadays, you want to send any communication to anywhere in the world, it's almost instantaneous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But back then, you wanted to send it to the next city over, you had about a day's journey.
Or longer.
Or longer. I mean, depending on how far away the city was. So you would have to, you didn't just willy-nilly go somewhere for only a week, unless you absolutely had to only be there for a week. Mm-hmm. And that being said, I think this, how technology is nowadays, has made us more lazy, more, it needs to happen now, instantaneous, because everything does happen in the now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think in the early days, we, like you were saying, we see mission trips as the disciples going out and spreading the word, and it be word of mouth. You know, God gave certain people a job and said, go and spread the good news.
Yep.
I have risen. I am the Lamb of God. Mm-hmm. And that gave us the ability to know who Christ was, know what was going forth, and know what he had done for us. I think today, it depends on who you ask, I think, and it depends on, like, the experience of the person who's, gone on mission trips. I know several, in the teen sense, they go to these, let's go build this house. It'll give the opportunity for these people to have a building, a place to stay, and we leave Instagram-worthy pictures, let's go. But you ask some of these adults, these missionaries who have gone out and have lived amongst those people and have lived there for weeks and weeks and months and years, they would give you a completely different story. They would say it's all about the relationships you build with those people.
Yeah.
And the relationships that you continue to grow with those people. Not about the well that you build, not about the amount of times you open the Bible, the amount of times you just live and coincide and utilize your gifts of communication and your gifts of being connected to the Holy Spirit to minister.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, and it's a teaching thing. And this is, again, going back to what Peter and Paul and Barnabas and all these other people were doing. They were going, they were teaching.
Mm-hmm.
These missionaries that go and risk their lives,
Yeah.
sometimes, they're going to teach these people how to do stuff on their own and using that opportunity. They don't come in. There's some missions out there that their whole thing is they're going to collect all this stuff and they're going to send it over there. What that does and what people don't realize is that actually hurts. Like, Africa gets targeted a lot.
Yep.
So there are missions that go and they collect clothes or shoes or water or whatever, and they send it over there. And what that is doing is those people that are over there that know how to make shoes and clothing, whatever, and that's actually building up their economy. It ruins their stores.
Yep.
So as much as we sit there and we think we're blessing these people, now, like some missions like Operation Christmas Child that directly deals with, we're going to send these gifts to these kids, we're going to give them a Christmas. That I agree with, because it's a once a year, it's specifically having to deal with Christmas.
And it's something that they may not usually get.
Right.
Or they have, available at
Right.
all.
So in those sense, I'm okay with it. But some of these other places that are sitting there and saying, we're gonna collect all these shoes and all these clothes and just send them over there. I understand your hearts are in a good place, but
You don't know what they actually
the stuff
need.
Yeah, you don't know what they need, and you don't know the situation that's over there because you're not over there. There may be a local store owner that has just opened up this store where he's making these fantastic shoes that are designed for the environment, and all of a sudden thousands of tennis shoes are getting donated, and now his store is out because now the people that are locally don't need those shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a country like Africa where, a continent like Africa. Don't get on to me for that.
You did a Drew Carey.
I did a
girl.
Drew Carey. You have countries like in Africa, there we go, that are unable to set up a independent government or an independent society because America's stepping in and being like, well, we'll just take care of you, but we're only going to take care of you for a week, take Instagram-worthy pictures, and then leave.
We helped. Click, click. Goodbye.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: like, I understand, I see your viewpoint, and I completely, agree with your viewpoint of, collecting all these shoes now that it's run out of business. And I think the missing link that mission trips and missionaries have when they do acts like that is they're picking countries that have an economy.
Yes.
Where instead we should be picking countries and tribes and cities and nations and tongues that do not have an economy.
No.
That sit back and say, we don't even have someone to make us shoes. And I think that would be a really good fix in that sense, because I want you to know that I agree with you. But it would also be like sending a bunch of food to a tribe in Africa that's very, very, very dangerous for a kid that's only been living off of one small meal a day.
Yeah. That's another thing too, is I think it goes into knowing.
Yep.
When Paul and
Being
Peter
educated.
when Paul and Peter and Barnabas were circulating around, it talks about them bringing things for the church, but they didn't bring stuff that they knew that particular church didn't need.
Yeah.
So I think if you go and you start a mission, and this goes into what you were saying, if you're going to go and start a mission that you're directing your attention specifically to a tribe in Africa, let's just say, then you need to go over there for an extended period of time and figure out what they need, and then come back and start that mission. Don't be here in America and just be like, well, I saw this tribe on the news. I think they need to be targeted. I'm gonna start a whole mission based on something I saw on the news.
Yeah.
That's where I think it is not good.
I'm not saying, you just touched on what I was going to talk about, which was having boots on the ground to figure out what you need first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You got to recon before you engage.
And I think that comes with, like, your connection with the people that you go. Like, just getting a group of people and saying, hey, in church, like, hey, we're going to go to this country and just, like, you know, stay at this hotel and then, you know,
just
go
experience.
out and live. But you don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen far too many churches and organizations say, we're just going to go and dance on the street, and then the police come.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you didn't connect with someone who is actually living there. And that's one of the reasons why I always go back to the trip I did in Hungary. It was extremely eye-opening, but we had connections. We knew exactly who we were going to talk to. We knew exactly which churches we were going to connect with. And every orphanage or foster care system that we associate ourselves with, we had a connection with them and partnered them with a church.
Yeah.
We said, this church over here is right down the street. They support what we're doing. We just danced at their service.
Yeah.
They want to help you, and they want to benefit you and help get these kids out of prostitution and human slavery.
But it goes back to that goes directly in with what I was saying about how you support. You don't go in and overtake that church.
Yes.
And say, we're better than you. What you did is you went in and you said, this has already been established. We're going to support that. So, like, going back with the shoes thing, going in and instead of bringing a bunch of shoes over to a place that has a person that's doing it, instead coming over and saying, we're bringing all these materials for you.
Right. Or
so
here's a business manager to help educate you on
Right.
your business.
But it's supporting what's already there.
Yes.
If it's already there.
Yes.
And then addressing what's not there.
Yeah.
And what is needed.
Yeah. And I want to sound as humble as humanly possible, but that was something that I did. I've talked multiple times on different negative things that I experienced at Audeum, but one of the positive things I experienced with Audeum is we didn't even have to go out of the country. We did an East Coast, we called it a serve tour.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up calling it a tour because I was like, I don't want to label this a mission trip. We won't be accepted into different places
Mm-hmm.
because it is in our own country.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have a harder time just kind of, and the goal wasn't necessarily for us to perform.
Right.
Our goal was we went to Atlanta, D.C., Connecticut, and Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
In Atlanta, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, they all had a Christian organization or a Christian foundation of an organization, whether they blasted it or not, that was either just starting up or trying to get their feet off the ground.
Yeah.
Or coming back. So the one we did in Atlanta, they took a couple years off, decided that the company was going to come back and start dancing and doing professional program again. So I called the director. I was like, hey, I'm doing this East Coast tour. How can we serve you?
Yep.
Because the connection I make with that person is going to boost their morale, boost what they need, and they can continue to spread throughout their community. Same with Connecticut and same with Pennsylvania. Come to find out, the Atlanta one, I actually dance for that company now, one. And two, because of that summer, that 3-day camp and that one performance that we did, that was to support their continuation of outreach in the community and spreading the word of God, not with Christian music all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but with wholesome, well thought out messages through the dance. They were able to afford their academy
Wow.
building, like where they have planted their youth academy.
That's awesome.
And now the company actually has its own facility instead of having to rent out a space.
Woohoo.
But like, there's just an example of just going right down the street from yourself or educating yourself and getting connected with those people is you're then pouring into people. That's a mission trip in itself. Going out on the street and saying, today, my mission trip is going to go out on the street of, Atlanta, or out on the street of Dahlonega, or out of the street of, wherever. Kennesaw, or out on the street of Macon. It doesn't matter where you go. I'm like trying to pinpoint all these different areas.
Mm-hmm.
But saying
Albany, Americas.
Yeah, it does, or anywhere, and saying I'm gonna try to talk to 5 people, and minister to 5 people in a unique way that they might understand.
Yeah.
That's a mission trip.
Yep.
Hey everyone! So normally this is the time when I would tell you about our sponsors, or lack thereof, and how to reach out to us if you want to sponsor us. However, the group has decided that we are going to wait on getting sponsors. So, instead, starting in March, we're going to be using this space to talk about some wonderful charities, ministries, and outreach opportunities that the table team will be sponsoring for that month. We can't wait. In the meantime, please continue listening to us on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, and Apple Podcast, finally, as well as YouTube. We are still on YouTube. That's all for me. Thanks again for listening. Bye, guys.
Alright, so we're actually going to take a little mini break from what we have chosen to talk about, and we're going to actually go to our shout-outs and our group text segment. So, Liv, take it away.
All right, so our shout out this week is Sweet Pea in a Pod. First off, we just have to say we're all obsessed with her handle.
Yes.
Just can't help it. But she made a Facebook shout out for us back when we, like I said in the prior 2 weeks, back when we were like, hey, share this information. We're about to, we're about to record our first episodes, and let everybody know that this is a happening thing. So Sweet Pea in a Pod, we just want to thank you so much for your support. I know you listen to it, and I know we've talked about it a little bit. It's a dear friend of mine. So, okay, and now on to group text, this segment where you ask us questions, we answer them, and yeah, it makes everyone's world go round.
Da, 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 da.
I just want to make sure I didn't
Your
miss any.
questions will be
Refresh
answered.
them. So we have a handful of questions from our Clara_Mount. She says, how do we feel about being pure before going on the mission field? In the sense, should you or should you not go if there is a big sin you are struggling with? That is question numero uno.
I think it depends on the sin in question.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't
and
say
how you
that,
are.
because all sin is the same. I would say how crippling.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, are you going to another country and you are struggling with pedophilic and tendencies and you're going to be around little children? Or are you maybe struggling with an addiction to a drug that is easily accessible in the Americas, but you happen to be going to a country where you won't have access to that, and you're using that you're focusing your efforts in something positive to help you, as a side effect, you're also, getting away from the thing that's bad from you.
I would say it depends on how it would affect you. Like, for instance, if you are having an addiction and you go to some place where you cannot find it, how much is that going to take away from you ministering if you are suffering from withdrawal?
Mm-hmm.
If in the case of the pedophilia, pedophilia.
That's what I said. Yeah,
Yeah.
pedophilia.
Okay. But
You don't need to put yourself, or
but
you're
say,
gonna.
But if it's something like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something.
Cheating.
I would try to help you, but I don't know what track you're going on.
I know, but basically, if it's something that is going to ultimately take you away and actually be more of a bad witnessing tool, gossip maybe. As long, almost everybody's guilty of gossiping at some point or another. But are you sitting here and saying that you have to be 100% pure in even gossip before you go? Well, is that going to take away from your trip? More likely than not. It's not going to. So...
And who's 100% pure when you go anywhere?
I mean...
But I know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I think, my opinion is, this is where, I'm going to say this, I know it's going to get taken out of context. This is where I feel like the Catholic Church somewhat has something right with the whole confessional thing. No, I don't believe that a priest should be put above God or on equal status with God. But it does say in the Bible that you are to go and confess your sins to your brother, and the brother or sister is to return that. So I feel like if you are about to go on a mission trip and you're struggling with something, whether it's you're cheating on your spouse or you're having, tendencies of or you're addicted to something like porn or whatever, I think you go to somebody you trust who maybe is going on that trip and just say, I need to have a kind of confession time with you.
Accountability partner.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it's accountability partner. And just going and saying, and it needs to be somebody that you trust, that you know is going to be receptive because I, like, for me, if I was going on a trip and I was struggling with something, I would go to any person in this room. Because I know y'all would sit there with a very loving heart, listen to what I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I would definitely do that. I think if you're struggling with a sin, that might be something that you are preaching about when you go over to wherever you're going, or something that you just don't feel comfortable holding that baggage before, like, while you're going and spreading the good news at the same time. I think, yeah, you definitely go to somebody that you trust, preferably that's going on the trip with you, and just having kind of a little confessional time, and just kind of having a heart-to-heart, come to Jesus meeting, and just saying, you know, this is what I'm struggling with, and just having that moment. That's what I would say.
I'm going to take the route of less extreme, personally.
Okay.
I would say first you need to you sit back and ask the Lord, what do you feel convicted of sin-wise in the first place?
Yeah.
Because, you know, we sin every day. We are humans. We're imperfect. We sin. But if you're being led to go on a mission trip and you're being led by the Lord saying, I want you on this trip, you have something to bring to the table. It doesn't matter what your past is, and I hear what you guys are saying about the extreme sins that, you know, addiction of any sort, or, you know, cheating on your wife, or, you know, or husband, you know, vice versa. But, like, we're all sinners, so who's to say God isn't going to transform your heart on the mission field whilst transforming others' hearts?
That's what I was saying.
I'm just like, you know, in my opinion, ask the Lord, say, God, convict me if I have sinned in a way that would hinder or jeopardize my job on this mission trip. And if God says
this particular thing, yeah.
Well, I'm saying, like, if he's like,
yeah.
I mean, you're a sinner, but there's, you know.
And if he wants
you're a sinner going to talk to sinners, I mean.
Yeah.
If he wants you there, he's going to make it work.
Exactly.
Particularly if you're, because, I mean, we're coming at it from the perspective of they're willing. Like, we want to go, but we also want to work on this thing that we know we're not happy with in our life.
And I mean, if it's a big enough sin where, I mean, if we look at the, you know, addiction side of things, if it's addicted to, you know, pornography or, you know, any kind of drug, alcohol abuse, you know, things of that nature, the church isn't going to let you go.
Particularly if they know about it.
Right, but the pastor and the leader isn't going to sit there and be like, yeah, you can come.
At least
like God's gonna convict that person and give them a list of people, because whoever's running that mission trip, whoever's sitting down and saying, all right, God, who do you want on this trip? God's gonna download that list. He did it when I did the surf tour. God was very clear. He's like, these are the people going on your trip. And those are the people that signed up. And then I asked 2 of them personally. I was like, I feel like God's asked me to ask you to go on this trip. And they came. It's like, God's going to tell the leadership of that mission.
Yeah.
These are the people who go. These are the people who don't. That person doesn't have to know. Oh, you're struggling with a big sin. No, if you've been invited, God's downloaded that in somebody else. And if you feel like you're supposed to go, you're supposed to go. Like, where he walks, you walk. Where he says go, you go.
I'm happy you're saying downloaded, because the more I think about our tiny rabbit trail, the more I think about our anatomy and the way that we're made up, we are sentient computers.
Yeah.
Really and truly. So I like that.
And I do want to actually add one more thing. It actually goes back to the being a somebody who suffers from pedophilic.
And they don't want to hurt other people, yeah.
Well, there was actually somebody who was convicted of being a pedophile. Part of his recovery was to play Barney. That was part of his recovery to be able to get it off his record.
This one. Yep.
I know, but continue with the story. Was it successful?
Yes, it was very successful.
Yep.
It was at the very, he had served his time. He had gone through therapy and stuff, and that was the last thing to get it off his record.
Because
and he played it for, I believe it was a couple years.
If he could be around.
And
them. Like, he had to check in with, like, his parole officer and stuff like that. But it was to see if he could be around these kids day to day without taking a step further. So, trust me, they kept the kids safe.
No, I get that.
I want to make sure that's stated. They kept the kids safe.
There's a part of me that's just like, sometimes like exposure therapy. That's the word I was looking for. I was like, is this some form of exposure therapy? What are we doing? So
No, it's
I was saying God can be doing the same thing.
I know. It's just, yeah, like I said.
Well, and who are we to sit here and say you're not pure enough? Because like the first part of this question was, how do we feel about being pure before going on a mission field? I'm sorry, I'm not pure.
I'm sorry,
I'm
but
not
if
pure.
you appear pure, chances are
hiding
the skeletons in your closet are massive.
Yeah, and no outside person can actually look at your spirit, look at your soul, and look at your heart the way God can.
Yeah.
You see, Sam, if Strider was bad, I think he would appear fair but feel foul. But actually, he appears foul but he feels fair.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Next question is from Easy.238. She is an avid question asker. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
How do you prepare for the heaviness of a trip?
Since I've never had to do it before, anybody else want to comment?
I mean, I can go into this one. I've experienced it more often than
I want to
feeling
say
lightness.
the rest of everyone in the room.
No. Just the more times I've been on different trips, the more times I've exposed myself to different cultures and different economies and different just ways that a mission trip can actually look, or missions in general. There's really no way to prepare for the heaviness that you're going to feel. It's something I tend to call like post-mission PTSD, because you come back from the trip not only, if say you go to a different country, not only jet lagged, but you come back from a trip seeing the heaviness and the weight of what other people are carrying, that you were just able to, for a second, give them a glimpse of hope.
Mm-hmm.
While I was in Hungary, there was this little boy. If I could have taken him on that bus with me to go back to the U.S. without going to Hungarian jail, where I would have never, ever, ever gotten out of jail, I would have, because for a moment, that boy was able to look at me and tell someone outside of his sister, whom he was protecting in the worst orphanage I've ever seen in my life. That little boy was able to say to somebody outside of his sister, I love you.
Mm.
And I was like, that's a child, and that's what I'm here to do. And I'm about to leave. And it was a brothel situation where cops were coming in, spending a couple of, good 20, 30 minutes to an hour, and leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And then the girl would follow. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. And the amount of heaviness and weight that I felt coming home was awful. I think it was a good solid 2 weeks of just pure depression. I was like, how am I supposed to continue my day to day, and how am I supposed to continue forward in my life knowing that kid is in an unsafe situation where I can't even take him out of it because his parents contact him twice a year? Because in Hungary, if the parent contacts you, phone call, letter, or visitation twice a year, you can't be adopted. You're just stuck in this little home. And God told me, after 2 weeks of having a reoccurring dream, just constantly, over and over and over again, He said, your mission was not to save. Your mission was to show that people care and love them. So just reminding yourself what the overall mission of your trip is, whether that's to shed love, whether that's to spread the gospel, whether that's to build a home, whether that's to build a well, or whether that's just to dance on the streets of DC and not even, think twice on if somebody's actually watching. Someone is watching, and your mission is accomplished when, God says, you have done good, my good and faithful servant. But
one of my favorite verses.
Yep. I mean, mission trips are like close to home. So.
Yep.
Anyone else?
I'm going to say the only thing I would think of is with any mission trip, pray before you go that God gives you strength.
Yep.
For what you're going to see.
Yep.
And don't go with any expectations. And sometimes people sit there and be like, okay, you need to be expected to be fulfilled. Nuh-uh. Don't go with any expectations, because the less expectations you have, the more receptive you can be to what God is going to show you.
I still think you should do a little research about the area you're going.
No. There's a difference between.
But I know what you mean.
Being aware
spiritual
of
expectations.
Right, spiritual
versus,
expectations.
Hey, I want to know where I'm actually going.
Yeah, don't sit there and pack a heavy jacket if you're going to go to, Africa. Like, have those expectations.
Unless you're going up on the mountain. But.
Yeah. But no, I'm talking about as far as like what you're going to be experiencing, like when you're actually there working with the tribes or whatever.
Right.
Don't go with any expectations, even if it's I have the expectation of I'm gonna go and I'm gonna help. Don't even have that. Like that's a very simple one to have of I'm gonna go, and that's what they say a lot of times with mission trips is we're gonna go and we're gonna help. We're gonna go and we're gonna learn. That's the only expectation you should have.
Yeah, like that.
Because that way you're opening yourself up to anything God wants to show you. Yep. So that's what I would say is pray before you go and don't have any expectations.
Have a prayer partner while you're gone.
Yes.
Would be another good idea. Someone who is dedicated to spend time every day in prayer for you and intercede for you while over there. Because I find sometimes on trips I have very little time to pray for myself and pray with the Lord by myself.
Yeah.
Because it's such a go situation, especially in my field of missions where I dance most of the time. It's like as soon as I get off that plane, I'm being lugged across the country to a different location, put on a stage, put in the street, put in a church, put in a, homeless community. It doesn't matter where I'm at. Practicing, rehearsing, making sure that we get over the jet lag, going straight to sleep, dancing from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. And then, next thing I know, I've gone 5 days without asking the Lord to protect me and intercede and send his angels to come and protect me. So having that prayer partner back at home to intercede for you is massively helpful.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because intercession is amazing.
Next question.
Well, wait a second. I was going to add one more thing to it. Back when I was a kid, my dad and his father partnered with a group that did ministry to prisoners. Mm-hmm. And the thing that always left an impression on him was the maximum security sections of the prisons.
I have stories.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, at the end of the day, you see, when you first get in there, it's nothing in their eyes. And if you leave and you even see a glimpse of hope, you know you've done well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because, again, we are not called to save, we are called to spread the word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, God does.
To plant the seed.
Yep. Yeah.
Now can I say it?
Yes.
Next question.
This final, let me double check and make sure this is the final question because I don't want to miss anything from our listeners.
Yeah, these are good questions.
Spiritual food, books of the Bible, videos, etc. that can be absorbed before going on the field. For me, the spiritual food that I found most beneficial was actually just talking to missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually know of any books or any videos that I could suggest except for typing in, you can do OM missionaries, you can do just in general watch different missionary YouTube videos, but listen to the stories that they have to say and listen to the verbiage that they use and how they continue to cope forward, and then just talk to missionaries. I think having that relationship with missionaries is the best spiritual food I can suggest.
I would say, for me, it would be reading any accounts of Peter and Paul specifically, because Paul kind of tells it like it is, where he talks about when he's writing from prison and stuff like that, where he's very honest about what he's going through. And not that Paul ever wasn't honest, but there are some parts where Paul just says, "I'm in prison, thank you for your prayers." Like, there are some parts where it's just very quick, but going in any of the parts where he is very honest about what he's going through in prison. And I know that's an extreme case, but just being able to read how they dealt with it back then. Because they really were, they may have had, one or two other people with them, but it wasn't like it was this huge group that went. They weren't supported by a church. They were the church.
Right.
So I think seeing kind of how they dealt with it is encouraging for me because they were in such extreme cases and they still had that faith. And so just being able to remind yourself that if you go and your instant reaction when you get there is, oh, it's so hot or oh, it's so cold, just being able to have those verses in your mind that you can sit there and go, but I'm not in prison. I'm not deprived of food. I'm with these group of people that are supporting me and I'm supporting them. And being able to recall that, I think is very beneficial for me. Anybody else?
I mean, going along with what you're saying, even if you are imprisoned while you're there, knowing that God knows your pain.
Yeah.
There are people who have gone before you that have gone through this just because he knew that you were going to be here.
Yeah.
The Bible's the fast food.
Yep.
And our final question is support raising versus self-funded / marketplace worker.
So
I
you
saw
need
that
to
on the
explain
outline.
this.
I was like, what is that?
So the marketplace worker is actually a newer term for me, and I don't really have much education as far as marketplace worker. My assumption is it probably is going a little bit in depth as far as Youth with a Mission, being a missionary on a mission field with, only and is not being received funds from the actual organization they're working for, but having to do raising and do all that stuff. I think that's what this particular one is, but again, marketplace worker is a new term for me, and even in a little bit of research, I haven't really found a definition for it. So I'm just going to touch on the support raising versus the self-funded part.
Okay.
As far as mission trips go, a lot of people send out support letters.
Yes.
And send out letters of
Okay,
support.
this makes more sense.
And asking for funding, saying, hey, this is the trip I'm going on. If you feel led and the Lord is leading you to donate money here, it would really help me out in my mission trip. Opposed to the other way, where is self-funded. You feel personally called to put your own personal money and invest in your mission trip going forward. One of the jobs that I have has a missions fund, and they donate money to the mission attendees. I don't want to say missionaries because I'm not technically like a missionary per se, where I live a missionary life, but I do go on mission trips in the dance world. They have a fund specifically for being able to send people out, build them up, keep them going. So the difference between them is one is done on their own and one is done through support of others. And as far as like the question I think goes, as far as I'm taking this question, is that is done depending on what the Lord is calling you to do. Is the Lord calling you to provide your own funds, work for your own mission trip and move forward? Or is he calling you and saying, putting on your heart and saying, hey, ask these groups of people to support you in your trip. They'll give you money. I've done both. Both have been successful.
I don't think there's one that's better than the other.
No.
I think I agree 100% with you. I think you go with what the Lord is calling you to do.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything different?
No.
Okay. Okay. Cool. We all agree on that.
Whoa!
What?
That's pretty cool.
Well, that was awesome for our group text.
I know, that
We
was
had
pretty
a
dope.
lot of
I'm really happy
questions.
about that one.
All right, so continuing on with what can cause a mission or a mission trip to fail?
A lot.
Yeah. That's what I put on
Who
mine.
wants to start?
I'll start.
Go for it, Jay.
I think the number one reason why a mission trip can fail is losing sight of the reason why you're there.
Yep, I agree with that.
Losing sight of God. Because, especially like if you have pride creeping, like say your mission trip is to go and build houses for needy families and spread the word that way. And you get down there and you go, look, we are building these houses. Look how good we are. And all of a sudden, everything can just go downhill from there.
It's ego.
Let ego, pride, etc. get in the way.
Yeah.
If it's, supporting an orphanage, if it's digging wells, again, ego, whatever. I'm trying to think of other things that, when you're trying to raise money for it, greed getting in the way. It can fail before it even gets off the ground from this. I think that would be the number one biggest thing to have a mission fail.
I would say, so we're going like this.
That's fine.
I would say that one of the biggest things that can cause a mission trip to fail is if you have a group of people who are going that have not been called. And I'm not going to say that their egos are in the way, because you can have somebody who's very humble about going but should not be on that trip. So I would definitely say that is if you have a group of people who are there that God has not led them to be there, you're not going to get the success or the message that the Lord is trying to send.
You stole mine.
So like a parent making their kids go.
Yeah. That, I think that's
I can go into a different way of that then, yes.
Well, I mean, just in general.
Yes.
If you, that's a big reason why I haven't gone on mission trips,
Right.
because I don't feel like I'm being called to do that. I think one of the times that when we met talking about the podcast, one of the big things that I pushed was getting involved with missions. But I have not come to y'all at all and been like, I feel like we need to be going on a mission trip as a podcast. That's not what I feel. I do feel like we need to be getting involved with local missions.
Yes.
Because it is local, and I feel like the emphasis a lot of times gets put on helping those that are not here. Those other poor unfortunate souls that are
so sad, so true.
Yeah, that don't have technology and we're missing the battle on the home front.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's where I'm being led is to battle on the home front. I think if God ever did lead me to go battle over there or, somewhere else, I would hope that I would jump at that and I would honor that. But I just don't feel like that's where I'm being led. If I were to go on a mission trip, not feeling that lead, then that's a sin. I'm doing something that's against what God is trying to get me to do.
And it's not going to help you. It's just going to, okay, so little thing from when I was in college, I pushed myself to go on to this little day trip to Chattanooga one day, and they were passing out pamphlets to strangers, and I just was miserable doing it because that's just not me.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that I don't want people to be saved. It's just like, I can't just walk up to a random stranger and give them something. And I felt like the worst person on that trip. And, like, I got upset. And it's like, that's just, you need to use your gifts in the way that they were given to you. And if you push yourself in a way that's just going to hinder everyone else or even, your own intent, then, that God does not want you to be miserable while you're ministering to other people. Because an unhappy Christian is really the antithesis of everything. That's an oxymoron. That shouldn't exist. So.
I'm going to have to pipe in a little bit here and go, I've always kind of had that feeling like I need to go on a mission trip. Not an obligation, but I've always wanted to. And like I said earlier with the Thailand one, it just didn't work out. Every single time, it just hasn't worked out to where I could go. And it's now getting older, it's getting even more difficult because that means I'm having to leave my hourly paid job, which is a huge financial problem. I'm having to, leave everything here, whether we pay for somebody to do stuff or whatever, if me and Jordan go, or I'm just leaving Jordan for that.
I was about to say, and you're leaving your wife.
I'm not sure if you would come or not. That's the thing.
Well, I just said I don't feel like I'm supposed to be going on one, so you be leaving your wife. That's a problem.
But, you get what I'm saying I've always felt called for that, but I've never had the right opportunity.
Liv.
If you're going for the wrong reasons, don't go.
Yeah.
Like, if the reason you're going is because a bunch of your friends are going, don't go.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Don't go to hang out with your friends. Hang out with them when they get back.
Yeah.
Don't go to brag and be like, oh, hey, I did this thing. I'm so awesome. Whatever.
Yeah. So, we can go around the circle. This is the last point. What advice would you give to somebody who's either thinking about starting a mission or is debating about going on a mission trip, and you can discern between the two if it's two different advices? Who wants to start?
Me.
Go.
I want to jump in on this because I didn't have much to say on the last one.
No, you're fine.
But I do have a lot to say because I've done both led a mission trip and not necessarily led a mission itself, but have worked
you've been a part of one.
As far as the mission go, make sure that you have your ducks in a row. You are a 501c3 nonprofit and are taking advantage of the benefits of being a 501c3 nonprofit, has to offer. But if you decide to be an LLC, be sure to have a board of just kind of directors and leaders to continue to hold you accountable, even though an LLC is not required to have the quote-unquote board.
Mm-hmm.
But also do it not, make sure you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you feel led to go. Money will corrupt that particular situation. I'm trying to make it quick.
Absolute money will corrupt. Absolutely.
But so yeah, as far as like missions go, make sure that you have a clear-cut mission statement. If you're a 501c3 nonprofit, you know the benefits that comes. LLC, the same thing. And just be very, heart conscious and don't let the organization run you. Make sure that God is running the organization and you're just the spearhead. As far as preparing for mission trips itself and just how to prepare for that, and an important thing to remember on that front is it's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
At the end of the day, like, we're not here to serve us. We're not here to serve our desires and our needs. It's not about going and seeing the country. It's not about going and sightseeing and getting those pictures. It's about what is the mission there. And if you do get a chance to go on a mission trip and you get a day of sightseeing, how is that a part of your trip? How is that still, because somebody funded for you to be there even on that day off? How is that a part of your mission trip? How are you going to continue pushing forward and spreading the gospel and fulfilling your mission in that trip?
Mm-hmm. John?
I mean, Olivia kind of stole almost everything there, but...
So come up with a new thought now.
I didn't speak very much in the last one, so, because Jordan took mine.
Sorry.
No, this was your podcast essentially, Olivia, because you're the only one who's been on a mission trip.
I love mission trips. I've been really blessed to have a job where my giftings and the things that I like to do are a universal language, where I actually get the opportunity to dance and not have to worry about the language barrier. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, and one thing I would have to say is the way you live and carry yourself on the mission or mission trip will speak more than anything you could say.
Yep, actions speak louder than words.
Yep.
That's why I do dance mission trips. That's an action.
But I mean, even on your day off, you are living the way you would.
Yeah. And make sure you have a translator if you go overseas to a different country.
Oh
without
gosh,
a translator.
yes.
Oh my goodness, I had to speak at Hungary and we had a translator, and it's also practice with a translator before you have to talk with a translator, because that is like the hardest thing. So you say a sentence, let them talk. Then you continue, let them talk. So it's caught up. It's practice with a translator.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was...
No, you're fine.
Interject
ADD
right.
moment. I would say pray a lot.
Yeah.
Before you even make the decision to do either one. And don't just pray on your own, but go to your friends and your family who are going to be supporting you in this and pray with them.
Mm-hmm.
And have them pray over you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
lots and lots and lots of
Have
prayer.
that prayer partner.
Yep. Lots and lots and lots of prayer. For either missions or mission trip. I would say when we started this, there was a lot of praying on our end.
Yeah.
Of if this is what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it. And it's gone. I feel like I know that it's blessed by God because of how smooth it has gone.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like we are listening as we are praying. So lots of prayer.
Why are you even going? Like, you need to have, I believe, a goal in mind and stick to that goal. Or if you don't feel like you have one, pray to God for a goal so that way you are mindful of everything that you do. Like, this is kind of piggybacking off what Olivia said about even on your days off, be mindful of where you are, what are you seeing on your day off? How can what you have learned when you're looking at things from either a different light or you're in a different place, what is that place like versus where you are? What does that tell you about the people? Are you able to see their needs more clearly in another light? Or are you able to do any further research? Just being mindful and aware of why you are there. Because this is not something to be taken lightly at all.
I agree. All right.
Yep.
All right, John, lead us out.
This has been just the quietest podcast for the two of us, and it's really making me uncomfortable.
I mean, I can start
No
messing with you all of
laughter.
a sudden.
There was very little laughter. Don't poke me. That's not okay. The touchy part is not okay. I was not weirded out by that, but just the fact that there was very little banter kind of wigged me out. Don't touch my glasses. I just clean them. Don't touch.
Well, next one's gonna have to be doubly funny to you know, make up for
I
that.
can handle that.
All right,
Well,
John.
It's
we'll
hard
see.
to make light of some like. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yes,
That's
you
like
did.
6.
Yes, you
You,
did.
I say you stopped counting a while
you
back.
talked
Yeah.
about some really like deep and heartbreaking stuff.
We got deep,
Yeah.
y'all.
You know,
Yeah, and missions is something I'm extremely passionate about. So
so I mean, of course, it makes perfect sense.
yeah,
All right, John, take us out.
I'm not gonna say anything.
But you're getting closer to the microphone.
I know.
This has been Called to the Table. Thank you for mouthing it, Olivia.
See, that's when you go, I am a stupid.
No, because I'm still saying that.
It's like the Grinch. I'm an idiot.
You're
an idiot.
I'm now paranoid. This has been Called to the Table. Thank you for joining us again. If you need to get in contact with us with questions, comments, suggestions for other podcasts, prayer requests, or just to tell Olivia to stop mouthing off what I'm saying, please contact us at Called to the Table Pod on Instagram and Facebook, or email us at calledtothetable@gmail.com.
Com.
I was going to spell it out, but that works.
COM. Calm.
Join us.
Please join us next time as we talk about Christian. Oh, Lord, I can't.
Mental health in the Christian faith.
Yes.
Apparently, I'm going through an episode.
He's having a heat wave.
He's having a nervous breakdown.
a tropical heat wave.
And on that note, bye.
Bye.
We had to redo this because some people forgot to say goodbye. So goodbye.